All right. Well, good morning again. So for those that I didn't get a chance to say hi to, my name is Eleanor Hodges with EcoAction Arlington. We're very pleased, even though it's May, to be holding this Earth Day breakfast on the topic of environmental justice. I'm now very pleased to introduce Matt Ferranti of the Arlington County Board. Matt is a wonderful ally and champion for environmental issues, and I think also during these troubling times, it's been really impressive to see the great leadership by our county board. So let me unmute you, Matt. I also wanted to point out on your top of your screen, you have a choice between switching between gallery view and speaker view. So during the presentations, we encourage you to choose speaker view. So let's all give a virtual applause and welcome Matt Ferranti.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone. And also thank you, Eleanor, for the introduction. I am thrilled to be here this morning. We are here virtually, but it is great to see so many friends and also folks I've gotten to know who are such leaders on the environment. I appreciate everyone coming. We got a good group. And I think it's important just to note that on we've shifted the time of this breakfast a little bit, but we are at the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And if you think back of the images that come to mind over the course of those 50 years, so much has happened. There's been a lot of challenge, but there's also been so much work done by so many on behalf of this cause to keep the earth and our environment a place that we can enjoy and a place that we can work so that our grandchildren might enjoy. So that's just a couple of opening thoughts. I'm going to take a little bit of just a risk this morning and just say one thing on my mind, which is because we lost a dear friend, Eric Gutschall, who his commitment to this issue was inspiring and is inspiring for me. And there's no easy way to mention that, but I do think it is worth mentioning because I know that this is such an important issue for him. And so he's on my heart, and I'm sure a lot of people's heart today. So I'm so looking forward to the discussion that we're the main show. I'm mindful that there's no easy way to transition from that prior topic, but at the main show I'm looking forward to. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things at a high level, and they're what the county has been doing. And there are several county employees, and so many of you are active on commissions. So I will tell you first. Last year, we took a major step with the community energy plan. And just a reminder, this was part of what led me to try to serve the community. And we set ambitious goals. We put Arlington back where I feel historically it has been over the years as a leader on climate change response. And so 2050, we set a goal of zero emissions, zero net carbon emissions. 2035, 100% renewable electricity for Arlington. That was a huge goal, and several of you know this was a Sierra Club goal that I and others adopted and we put into our community energy plan. And then lastly, kind of one of my biggest things is that we have to start doing this work now. And so we set a 2025 goal of 100% renewable electricity for government operations. So thrilled to do that. Let's remember the hopeful things this morning. And that was a great policy framework that we just put into Arlington County's stated goals. So that's one thing to remember. Major steps this January. We signed an agreement with Dominion, and that that's not to say Dominion is everyone's favorite group, nor necessarily my first thought, but it is a good partnership. And we signed an agreement for a solar farm that will lead us to over 80% of our county government energy being electricity by 2025, which is a huge step. If you had told me we would get that far last year, I would have said, wow, that's excellent progress. We got more to do, but that's a huge victory that seems now, because it happened this year pre-COVID, as though it's almost ancient history, but we should still remember it. We've got more to do there. After that, mostly change came to Richmond. We got the plastic bag tax finally. And that is a huge victory that when I moved here from DC 9 years ago, so wanted to see. We've got legislation on trees, best management practices, huge victory out of Richmond. And we got the Virginia Clean Energy Act, Clean Economy Act, excuse me. And that sets a framework. I mention these because to reach our community energy plan goals, we need them. We've also got much more work to do on stormwater, but the trees legislation is partial help. The county has also been working, even in the time of COVID, the last 3 months or 3 months plus, thanks in large part to Katie Crystal's leadership, fully supported. We got guidance on food waste. I won't say that that's as fast as we might ideally have loved it, but we are keeping our place in contract for the food waste reception facilities in Manassas, which is, I think, a big victory to get us. It'll take to fiscal year 22 to work on it. So the other thing I just have to mention, because there's several on the call who are on this call who are working on it, is the building, green buildings energy efficiency policy. That is so important, and we're working on that. So I'll just stop there. So a few thoughts. I want to finish with two. First, I just think it's important to recognize Susan Cunningham and Takis Karantonis, who are on the call, who are both seeking to serve the county. And then I want to just segue, and I'm looking forward to Karen, your thoughts. Part of our community energy plan is equity. It is in our policy. When I first started working as a professional, I lived in Houston near Pasadena, Texas, which is a environmental justice tragedy in a lot of respects. Policies 1.4 and 6.5 of our community energy plan put equity into our work. And so I'm looking forward to the environmental justice conversation, which is a whole next step after focusing on equity that Karen will bring forward. So Eleanor and Karen, looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. We are going to now do a poll. So on your screen in a moment, you're going to see a poll question. We encourage you to choose one of the answers, and we'll present the results in about 10 minutes. Okay, we'll take about 1 more minute. So we are going to take a few minutes to do a brief overview about EcoAction Arlington. So just give me a second to switch. So I think many of you are familiar with EcoAction Arlington, but for those that are not, we are a 42-year-old nonprofit, formerly known as Arlingtonians for a Clean Environment. And our mission is to protect the air, water, and open spaces in our community. And we focus on promoting stewardship and connecting everybody to practical solutions that we can do every day to achieve a sustainable lifestyle. Our vision is that all Arlingtonians are collectively engaged in creating a sustainable community. So here are the issues that we work on. So we overall are working towards a sustainable community, and we focus on the following program areas: advancing energy efficiency, increasing our tree canopy, reducing litter, engaging volunteers in our community and leveraging all the amazing resources in terms of both people and knowledge that we have in Arlington, and preparing our young people for the future. Over the last year, I wanted to share a little bit about the impact of our work. So in the energy efficiency area, through our amazing Energy Masters volunteers, last year we approved the energy efficiency of the homes of 107 families. And this work really kind of touches on the topic of today, environmental justice, because we focus all of this work on supporting low-income families in partnership with affordable housing properties. Through our tree canopy fund, we planted 414 trees. We have been doing this since 2009 and have planted over 1,200 trees in our community. And we focus this work on large native canopy trees. Twice a year, we open up the tree canopy fund for people who are interested in getting trees on private property. And right now we have an application available for trees to be planted this fall. And the deadline is June 29th. The bread and butter of EcoAction Arlington since our founding has been beautifying our community. And this is important in a number of ways. We remove 438 bags of trash from our waterways and parks. And this is important because these are the places that we all enjoy and go out in every day to recharge and enjoy nature, and we want these to be beautiful. These are also very critical areas for wildlife and ecohabitat, so making sure that we're keeping the dangerous pollution out of these waterways is important. And then this is a very important stewardship activity. We have hundreds of volunteers, including young people and people of all ages, who join us in this effort, and this kind of creates a community of people coming together, learning about our environment, our parks, our natural areas, and working together. So last year, we engaged 991 volunteers who contributed close to 4,000 volunteer hours. We're really proud of that, and I think we do hope that people who are new to us will kind of find ways that you can connect to our volunteer community. We have a lot of great activities. We do opportunities for people to work on policy, for people to do programs in the schools, to contribute to our outreach activities in the community. And this is also a way that our support that we get is leveraged by engaging all of these amazing volunteers. And then lastly, we do programs in Arlington Public Schools, and that's, I think, one of the most important things because these are our future leaders. So we last year taught 3,371 students. So I wanted to highlight some new work that we're very proud of. We recently created a Straw-Free Arlington program to recognize sustainable efforts by the restaurants in our community. So we have surveyed over 140 restaurants throughout Arlington and have published a sustainable restaurant guide on our website. So this is available. We do encourage you to support these restaurants because they're really going above and beyond and doing the many great things that they can do. It starts with our kind of token message of not giving out plastic straws unless they're requested, but then it goes above and beyond to restaurants that are using compostable containers, composting, using forest sustainable products on their paper products, and more. So please check this out, and we also are looking for volunteers to support this effort. So one of the reasons we do this breakfast, and this during the 50th anniversary of Earth Day is a very important year to be talking about this, is that creating a sustainable community takes collaboration. So we want to bring people together. We've been doing that for 42 years, but we do recognize that we need more people. So we want everybody who's here to consider ways that you can join our efforts, join other people, and kind of make a difference. So some of the things that we focus on are that we want to enable people to take part and do this work in everyday actions, and that small actions make a difference. This is especially important when I do work with kids, because we do want them to feel positive and feel like there is an opportunity to do things and that it does make a difference. We also have a wealth of knowledge and skills in this community, and so we want to bring those experts together so that we can use their knowledge and engage others. And then we are lucky in Arlington, we're an urban community, but we do have some amazing natural resources. So that's one of our focuses, is making sure that we're continuing to elevate and protect the amazing resources that we have, because they won't last without protection. So protecting our trees, streams, and open spaces. So one thing that will be happening after this breakfast is we'll be sending a survey. So we encourage you this afternoon to read through the survey and think about ways that you'd want to connect, and then others who might want to be part of this conversation. So I wanted to briefly highlight our next event. We are hosting a film discussion of The Story of Plastic on Tuesday, June 16th. So if you register for this event, you'll receive a link to view the movie at your own leisure. And then on June 16th, we'll be bringing together a panel of some wonderful experts to discuss the topic of this film. Arlington County has done some amazing work to commit to becoming a zero waste community, and this film will really look at the many challenges, which is an extremely challenging time with a lot of these issues, but how the waste is impacting people across the planet, and some of the things that communities around the world are doing to address these issues. So again, thank you. I've provided information here about the many ways to connect with us on social media. And we also encourage you to subscribe to our e-newsletter, and all of this information is available on our website. So we're going to now do two things. I'm going to share the results of the poll, and then we're going to announce the winner of the door prize. All right. So it looks like that people in Arlington know Arlington. So the most critical need of Arlington's community energy plan is the one that is also going to really make a big impact in increasing the energy and operational efficiency of our buildings. So another one that was up there was increasing renewable energy resources. I wanted to briefly also share, oops. All right, can you guys see the Arlington County's greenhouse gas emissions by sector? Yeah, so we wanted to, in conjunction with that poll question, share the work that the county has done to analyze where our greenhouse gas emissions, and indeed we do need to tackle our buildings. You can see that over close to 60% of our emissions are coming from our residential and commercial buildings, and then the next big area is transportation. So again, thanks to the Virginia Earth Day Network, we have a door prize. So this is a $20 gift certificate to Bees Wrap. So congratulations to Bill Browning, who is the recipient of this gift certificate. So we'll be contacting you, Bill, through email to fulfill this prize. So I'm now very pleased to introduce our speaker, Karen Kaplan. Karen Kaplan is the Environment and Climate Justice Chair for the Virginia State Conference of the NAACP and the co-chair for the Green New Deal of Virginia, where she is focused on advocating for and protecting communities from harmful energy production processes and discriminatory practices. She is also the co-chair of Transportation for the Sierra Club Virginia, and believes addressing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector is a crucial link towards building sustainability and equity in our communities. And before you start, Karen, I also wanted to share that through our grant from the Virginia Earth Day Network, EcoAction Arlington is pleased to give you a $200 honorarium to support your work in the NAACP. So we're very pleased to do that. We really thank you for being here today, and we're glad we're going to be able to make this donation. So before we start, I also wanted to explain how the question and answers are going to work. So in the bottom of your screen, you have a chat button, and please post all of your questions for Karen in the chat. We will do our best to address as many of those questions during the question and answer as we can. I'm not positive we'll get through them all, but we'll also try to answer some of the questions that we can in the chat. So Karen's presentation will be about 20 minutes, and then following that, we have some time for questions. One more time, if you're interested in having a speaker view on the top of your screen, you can switch from gallery view to speaker view, and that will enable you to see Karen's presentation. So let's now do our big Zoom welcome for Karen Kaplan, and let's give her a moment to pull up her presentation. So welcome, Karen.
Okay, I think can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So first, before I start, I want to say thank you to EcoAction Arlington for inviting me here today. I am very excited, and I hope I answer everybody's questions. And if not, as Eleanor mentioned, there will be a question and answer session. And thank you for the information you provided this morning, Matt. I look forward to the continued conversation about how we can increase environmental justice in Northern Virginia and throughout the Commonwealth. Let's see, I am not advancing it. So before I get into my presentation, I just wanted to provide a brief overview of some of the things that I'm involved with in Northern Virginia. As Eleanor said, I'm with NAACP as well as the Green New Deal Virginia, but I also serve as the co-chair for transportation for the Sierra Club Virginia. I'm a tree commissioner here in Fairfax County. I represent my magisterial district, Sully. I am also actively involved in trying to ensure competitiveness for DBE businesses in the transportation sector through my work with the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. And I was recently included as a technical advisory committee member for the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. What is environmental justice? You know, like the transportation sector, like I'll go into later on in this presentation, environmental justice is, it touches everything of our everyday life. But basically what it is just the fair and equal treatment of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, or income level in not only the development and implementation, but also the enforcement of our environmental laws, regulations, and policies and programs. And this is the definition that National NAACP uses when talking about environmental justice. But before I get into that, talking about the externalities or some of these different things that can impact the quality of life of an individual, I just want to take a step back and just note of the, make a note of the unprecedented times that we're currently in terms of trying to maintain a healthy community and recover from this COVID pandemic, as well as some of these horrific news events that we're seeing around the country in which there is brutality against communities of color, as we've seen in Minneapolis with George Floyd. We saw in the South with Mr. Aubrey, and as we're seeing all of these aggressive efforts escalating. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize these events and pray that we can work together as a community to get over these situations together. So you know, and some of these things that happen, whether it's aggression or through environmental injustices, impacts people and communities a lot differently than it would other communities. And so the piece of the environmental justice and the focus on equity is to make sure that all of our communities are resilient, self-reliant, and strong, and to be able to survive negative external influences and forces. And so the COVID-19 pandemic really highlighted and brought to light with this huge spotlight the inequities that have been transpiring across this country for decades. And, you know, I keep using this analogy, and I can't help not go back to it, is we keep hearing people say, well, we're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm. And I think that is not a really cohesive and community-oriented approach to take, right? So as we're trying to come up with solutions to recover from COVID-19 and or any other inequities, we need to think of, we're all in this together. We're on one planet, it's one earth, it's one environment. We're all on the same boat. It's just that different parts of the boat are fortified with luxuries, whereas other boats are not. And so parts of the boat are not. And so how do we fix this one boat for everybody to survive together? And I think that's really the focus that we need to do. Some of the things that impact communities and causes inequities, and I'll go through these rather briefly, is a lack of historical, cultural, and archaeological preservation. Here, this is a picture of Union Hill, where they were proposing the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, where they're planning on building, or they would like to build, an oversized compressor station in an historically African-American community that was started by freedmen and women right after the Civil War. The NAACP had written a report called Fumes Across the Fence Line. And it's the first report that actually looked at the inequities and quantified it in terms of health conditions and health impacts that these noxious uses would have on communities. And they actually identified that the siting of these types of projects, whether it be a pipeline or a compressor station or those types of infrastructure, race is the #1 contributing factor for siting of these locations. And as we saw with the Union Hill, typically all of the different conditions for a community that would make it not a feasible location for such an infrastructure did not matter. Whether it had historic resources, or it was a community that there was a possibility of contaminating its sole source for drinking water. All of those different criteria didn't matter as they tried to pursue placing this project moving forward. Other issues that can cause inequities within a community by horrible or poor project decisions is destroying an existing community. This picture is in the Chesapeake area in Virginia. And this was for the Southside Connector. It's another pipeline that's being proposed by the Virginia Natural Gas. And as you can see, it's going right through in the heart of a predominantly African-American community. And this community was actually established due to redlining regulations a few decades ago that concentrated African-American families to be able to only purchase homes in a particular part of the Chesapeake area. They survived, and yet they're putting this pipeline going through. And here's another one, environmental degradation. This is a picture of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, in which the construction is harming our waterways and also causing significant soil erosions along our mountains, our mountainsides. Upper respiratory and asthma are major medical conditions caused by these noxious and heavy polluting infrastructure. And as you can see, here's this huge processing facility, gas facility that is located right next to an African-American community, and more notably right next to a community center. And that is contributing to African-Americans have higher cases of asthma, and it's because of their close proximity to these noxious uses. Other externalities that cause environmental injustices across our country are lack of affordable housing, and I'll go into this a little bit more detail. And this was right here in Richmond a couple months ago. There was a homeless camp in one of the vacant sites. And so a lack of access to affordable housing is another issue that needs to be addressed, and as well as job and economics insecurities. Access to high-paying jobs, and not necessarily ensuring magnificent wealth for everyone, but a job in which a quality of life can be maintained, and opportunities for family members and children to have access to quality education and a chance for socioeconomic advancement based on not based on the zip code that they live in, but throughout the Commonwealth and the country. And inadequate transportation system is also a contributing factor for inequities within our communities. And so not being able to have access to a diverse and affordable transportation system limits a community or an individual or a family from having access to adequate medical services, access to higher education and better paying jobs. Pardon, sorry about that. And the COVID-19 pandemic really brought this one to light. Everyone has heard of the term food deserts, and that's what is used to describe a community that has very limited access to high valued foods. And typically only convenience stores or little bodegas or whatever that would have only high sugary foods and nothing of significant nutritional value. This is actually a shot of areas in Virginia that have been highlighted that the residents in these communities do not have access to a grocery store in which they can find, quality produce, meats or anything like, and fruits and vegetables. And of course, as part of EcoAction Arlington, I'm quite sure we're all very well aware of the issues with climate change and how that too has created inequities on a very varying scale, and how it's so important for us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and start to transition over to clean energy. And of course, as I have kind of sprinkled throughout this presentation, is discussion of natural disasters and pandemics. Whenever our communities are weakened or vulnerable, they have a harder time of recovering from those things. So how can we identify whether or not there are injustices that are happening, and when do we need to make sure that we enforce an equity lens in our decision-making process. So you've probably seen this graphic before in which they highlighted 3 individuals trying to watch a baseball game. In reality, somebody has more resources in which they have a very advantageous view, where somebody does not, they have limited. In this, the first section, you know, a negative in their resource and unable to see. Equality implies that you're given the same resources to everyone. And again, as we've seen on how inequities can create and hinder advancement and prevent quality of life, that this may not be the most viable solution. And then we say, okay, what is equity? We identify who's more vulnerable and who has the adequate resources to be self-reliant, and we, you know, give we allocate the equity, or I should say, we allocate the resources as needed. But if you really look at this, what this is trying to tell us is that all of these 3 individuals, particularly the person in the purple shirt, they all have the ability to view this game in one way or another. The only thing that is preventing them from actually having a view of the game that they're watching is the fence. So, and the justice part of it is identifying what those barriers are and remove those barriers. Of course, there are going to be resources that would need to be allocated, but regardless of how much the resources are given, there will always be an issue in self-resiliency for these communities. And communities, if you talk to any of them, they would prefer to be resilient. So that is why we need to identify those barriers. And those barriers are what I had gone through earlier, those externalities, whether it's you know, economic injustices, the lack of access to opportunities. And those are the things that we need to do. And how do we get to the heart of the matter to identify what are those inequities that are creating a barrier? Whenever we are going to be talking to communities, it's better to have the community to tell us what is needed. So right in front of you is this, it's been around for decades, is the Arnstein's Ladder of Citizens Engagement. And it goes through what the different types of community involvement is and the type of participation you will get. So if you look at the bottom rung, number 1, manipulation, that is just giving out zero information and just going through with what you want to do, and given the perception that you're working with this person, but you're not. You're telling them one thing, but you're going to do another. That causes major mistrust within the communities. And for future events, more than likely the citizen and the residents will not come out and speak with the decision-making group because they've already been manipulated and the trust is gone. You know, moving to the 4th rung, consultation. Yeah, it's great to have one meeting with them, you know, with the community, getting their feedback, and then doing what you want to do, and then having the ability to say, well, I spoke to X, Y, and Z, and they're with this project. No, that's not really what happened. You just went out and spoke with them about something very marginal about whatever the project is going to be. So that's kind of like a degree of tokenism, is which you really didn't involve the community. Where we really should try to, what we really should try to achieve and function within is within rung number 8, which is citizen control. And that is making sure that there's a two-way feedback loop. I am a community development planner. And so I can look at, you know, for instance, I can look at a map and I can identify where some of these issues are. But I don't know what the day-to-day lifestyle of the community that we're trying to make solutions for. And I can come up with a recommendation for, let's say, a sidewalk. But when we get there, they'll say, no, that's not what we need. So So this is a picture of one of 3 equity lenses that we can use when we're going through this decision-making process to make sure that we are considering equity on a community level the way that they need, in that it is intentional and transformative. Now this picture, one of the equity lens that we could use, wow, really, is governance. Who's at the table and who's making decisions. And this is kind of like what I was talking about. We were going to do a sidewalk inventory, and it was the community that showed us the way in which they were moving, and showed us a walking path that they themselves had to create because the sidewalk was inadequate. Another equity lens that we can use is how are resources allocated, like I just talked about, where the food deserts, what are the causes of redlining, and what are the equitable outcomes that we would like to achieve. And so looking at whenever there is a disaster or some type of emergency, who is impacted, who will be resilient, who survives, and who thrives. These are 3 really important things that we can look at when we're considering equity. And this is a picture of a high school student who actually created community gardens within her community. She is in a food desert, and she developed these raised beds. So this is an idea of what is intentional and transformative. And so now she's using this project to introduce fresh foods to her colleagues, her friends, and encouraging healthy eating and living off the land. And so NAACP's Environmental and Climate Justice Program has 3 main goals, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, advance energy and clean energy, and strengthen communities and resiliency. It's been around for about 10 years, and these are some of the reports that it has produced. And I just want to highlight the lights out in the cold, in which elimination of utilities and disconnection is something that is important to NAACP, and as the COVID-19 pandemic has identified as a very big issue that we need to figure out how to address and bring humanity back into utilities. And also, we just started in the sustainable building sector because we identified that there is vulnerable communities are bearing the brunt and impacts of unhealthy and energy efficient disaster vulnerable buildings, and trying to figure out how we can retrofit these buildings to and make them healthier, and also reduce the financial burdens of high energy bills. These are some of the programs that we are working on here in Virginia, and these are our local NAACP branches here. How much time do I have, Eleanor?
I think you could take another 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm just going to go briefly through the Green New Deal program. And so the Green New Deal is a way that we can reconnect the economy with people and our health and our ecosystem. And the Green New Deal, its goal is to combat climate change and inequity. Those are the 2 crises that are inextricably joined. And how do we make an equitable transition to clean energy economy? And these are our 5 major policy themes, in which it's, clean 100% clean renewables, addressing the economic injustices, making sure the environment is clean, addressing our local scale agriculture, protecting our local farmers, and also, doing an equitable and adequate transportation system with more diverse options. So if you consider 3 circles, you have climate, jobs, and equity, that little center, the shaded area, that's the Green New Deal. And these are our working groups that we're looking at all those different aspects within Virginia to address legislatively. This is a legislative effort as well. It's a grassroots effort with over 60 or so community organizations that are part of the coalition. And this is our 2020 legislative policy overview, but I just wanted to highlight number 2, 5, and 8. These are bills that we were able to get passed, particularly number 8, which is House Bill 585, which was patroned by Delegate Guzman, which promotes transit-oriented development within our communities. So if you want to learn more about the Green New Deal, please join us June 3rd. We have a summit. You can go on our Facebook page and find out some more information. And here's my contact information. And please reach out to me. I'd love to be able to continue the conversation about all of these different things. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so very much, Karen. So I am now pleased to introduce 2 of our board members, Carrie Thompson and Sylvia Lucero, who are going to be moderating the question and answer section. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, who's going to be leading this section.
Thank you so much, Karen, for the wonderful presentation. So the first question, and I think the answer must be yes, is it possible to receive a copy of the presentation?
Yes.
Eleanor, are we going to be posting this or emailing out?
So Karen, are you okay also sharing your presentation?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll also be posting a recording of this event. So thank you.
Okay, excellent. So here's a question for you, Karen. In Arlington, housing is so expensive, and we talk a lot about the missing middle. In your opinion, is there a middle class right now? And how can we move forward on any of these issues, such as housing, when we have so many people in the Commonwealth who are underpaid?
That's a great question. And so before I answer that, I just want to say that I am currently wearing my NAACP hat. We're currently putting together a webinar to discuss just this, affordable housing. We just had a transportation summit where transportation, land use, and affordable housing is so intricately intertwined that you can't think of one without the other. And so when we started talking about transportation, we realized that we really need to start talking about affordable housing as well, particularly in the Nova region. And so there's so many different ways in which we can address the affordable housing inventory, whether it's identifying infill development or allowing for accessory dwelling units within, like what we're doing in Fairfax County, or developing other programs such as land trust, or something to ensure that these housing stock units stay in the affordable housing realm in perpetuity. So sometimes there can be a development that creates an affordable housing inventory. The person who purchases this affordable housing the first time, it's affordable. And then when they go to resale it, it usually goes to and is sold at market value. So how do we make sure that it is maintained? So the city of Winter Park in Florida, they came up with a program in which they created a land trust, and they wanted to make sure it stayed in affordable housing stock in perpetuity. And so you always want to make sure the purchaser, when they get ready to sell the home, has some kind of equity. So that is allowed, but they have a cap on how much that they can resale it. So allowing that homeowner to build equity, but still maintain that affordable housing unit. And as you said, that middle housing piece is important. I'm in Western Fairfax County, and that piece, that middle housing piece is missing. And that is something that we need to work with our communities as well as our governments to ensure that happens. So that is something that we're working on right now. And I will definitely, when we get that webinar date, I will definitely forward that information and have that. And hopefully you can spread it amongst your members so you can join us on that webinar.
Karen, here's another question, and it's linked to what you were discussing because you mentioned transportation. Metro rail and bus are under stress right now. How can we ensure that we rescue the system and not allow service to further deteriorate for working families?
That is a great question, and I'm very concerned about that as well, because now as we're moving forward, there's this safety issue as well as it's a type of transportation that we cannot lose, right? Because this allows for, you know, our vulnerable communities, as well as anybody to be able to access going from point A to point B without a car, right? The governor had passed some transportation bills within the Commonwealth that actually identified funding for transit that it had not before. In addition to that, it also provided funding for dedicated transit funding for the Hampton Roads Transit Authority, and as well as providing transit funding for the Richmond area. However, with COVID-19, we're not really sure how that budget's going to work out. But we just need to make sure that our elected officials are aware that we want to make sure that that we don't lose funding for our transportation projects. And we also have to be more strategic in how we identify what we're going to fund. We can no longer continue to fund our highways and widening of roads because we also have to consider we're going to construct new roads or we're going to widen new roads, but we're also increasing our operation and maintenance budget as well. And so we're able to transport more people via bus than some of these roadway improvement projects. So working to, and so if we can do a very strategic approach in our transportation planning, in that we have our bus and rail, well, really our bus because it's more flexible, but our bus system travel from where people want to go. Sometimes when we, you know, see buses that are empty, it's because it's going somewhere that no one wants to go. So making sure our bus routes are efficient and is going to transport as many, you know, more people, be able to have it to be reliable, for enough frequency that it's convenient for folks to take, and it goes where people wants to go. And so we just have to be able to go out and reach and talk to our community to find out how to make our bus system and our rail systems more efficient. And I'll just leave it at, I can go on forever with this one.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, we're going to shift focus just a little bit to the legislative arena, and the question will be in two parts. What will be the legislative priorities related to climate for the NAACP in the coming session? And I'd like to add, you know, looking at the environmental legislation that was passed in this recent session, from on a scale from 1 to 10, how far do you think it went in meeting some of the Virginia Green New Deal objectives?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry, I didn't get it completely.
I'm sorry, that's probably a little too much packed into one. So the first is, what will be the legislative priorities related to climate for the NAACP in the coming session? And the other one is looking back to just a few months ago on how far you think the recently passed environmental legislation in Virginia went towards addressing some of the goals of the Green New Deal.
Okay. Okay, so for NAACP, what our legislative priorities in 2021 is going to be, so NAACP is a member of the Green New Deal, Virginia. So, we are a coalition member. And so trying to get, actually, let me answer the second one first. So the VCEA, while it did advance the Commonwealth in our transition into clean energy, it extended the timeline out to, I believe, 2045. Whereas the Green New Deal, we wanted to transition to clean energy by 2036. So that is going to be a priority. We're going to still try to get that, that timeline closer to now, because based on the UN climate report, we don't have that time. Mm-hmm. The second thing that we did not get last in the legislative session that we are going to pursue in 2021 is a 100% moratorium against all fossil fuel infrastructure. And then there was also a building efficiency criteria of 2.4%, and then it was going to incrementally increase over the years. So those are the three top things that we're going to be moving forward with in 2021. We're still developing and refining exactly what our clean energy and actually all of our legislative policies are going to be. And that's what June 3rd is about. We're going to be talking to the, the purpose of it is to reach out and talk to the community to get feedback as to what we're going to be doing. So on June 3rd, we're going to be breaking out for an hour into workout groups based on those different working groups that I had identified. And they're going to have more detailed drill down discussions on that specific topic. And so there is the topic, the group that's going to be talking about energy is the DARE group, or defossilization, energy efficiency, and renewables group. So go in that group if you can join us on June 3rd and help us finalize what our 2021 legislative platform is going to be. And now going back to what NAACP's legislative platform is, we're going to be supporting what those clean energies are, but we're also going to be looking at a more environmental justice approach as well. The Commonwealth has just passed the RGGI program, which is a carbon pricing program, and is looking at joining another carbon pricing program called the Transportation and Climate Initiative. And historically, these carbon pricing programs have significant environmental justice issues in that it allows polluters to continue polluting, and it gives, certain things to allow more the vulnerable communities to continue to be impacted. And so that is going to be one of the major legislative pursuits for NAACP next year, is watching what happens with Transportation and Climate Initiative and making sure that there's a significant equity piece as part of that legislation.
Excellent.
Among many.
So a participant who joined a little bit late and probably missed the poll that we took on Arlington's community energy plan, but still asks a good question. Wearing your NAACP hat, if you've had an opportunity to take a look at Arlington's plan, and maybe you haven't, which components of it do you think we should prioritize?
I'm going to say I did not get an opportunity to really look at it. I think, but I will just say, based on some of the numbers that Eleanor had shown before we started talking, in which the greenhouse gas emission was the highest contributor, is making, maybe overlaying to see where the unhealthy buildings are and focusing on how you can make those healthy. And energy efficiency and reducing the energy cost burden per household is a really big issue, as well as allowing for, I'm not really sure. So another really great initiative is solar, being able to transition to solar, and that too helps reduce the energy cost burden.
All righty. So earlier, a participant asked, let's see if I can find the question, maybe just a factual question from you regarding affordable housing. What percentage of one's income, in your opinion, should somebody spend on affordable housing? In other words, our lower income residents, what should they be expected, or what are they capable? What percentage are they capable of spending?
So I think they go with, a certain percentage under the AMI, and typically I've noticed municipalities tend to use that, and I don't know what Arlington does. Maybe Matt can tell us. I don't know, but I hate to put you on the spot, Matt. Sorry, but I have noticed that some localities use a kind of general formula, and with no consideration for geographical differences. So what is affordable in Arlington? Well, no, what's affordable in Sanford, Florida is not affordable in Arlington, and vice versa. In addition to that, some of these affordability tends to, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. And it's not just the affordability, but also ensuring communities have access to funding support to help pay for their housing, whether it be, and I think if you're going to be talking about equity, is through resources that would support utility disruption, resources that would support prevention of evictions, resources that would still help to support rental payments. Those are the equity pieces that are also needed in the affordable housing discussion. So it's not just how is it defined. That is very important, and it should be based on localities and what the cost of living is for that locality, but also within those localities, what are those safety net programs that are in place in case these communities and vulnerable families get into a dire situation, that they can have those resources in place in order to help them so they don't become homeless. And so that's with the lowering energy burden.
Matt, do you want to weigh in quickly on Arlington specifically? Whoops, I think you need to unmute. Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. So Arlington uses, the general rule of thumb is 30% of area median income, but nationally and still unfortunately in Arlington, we end up with a closer, some households end up with closer to 40% of AMI is, for example, on our housing grant, we would like to bring that lower. There's much more to do, and we have one of our housing staff, Yumi, is on the phone, and we have also several other Arlington County staff who are very mindful of affordable housing in addition to the connection to the environment.
Thanks, Matt. Eleanor, I see we only have 1 or 2 minutes, but I have one more question. Should I read it out? Unmute.
30 seconds for the last question, Karen, if you can, we'll challenge you.
Okay. This is about educating our youngest citizens about environmental justice. We often think that young people think of people issues, inequality, racism, et cetera, as separate from place issues, environmental, sustainability, energy, et cetera, which leads to very segregated and siloed discussions. Do you find this to be true at the systems and government level as well when broaching the subject of environmental justice? And how do you suggest all of us on this call deal with it? It's a long question.
Yes, I'm going to go with if I understood, are decisions made in silos? Yes. Is that an issue? Yes, because there's always going to be a broken link in finding that solution, right? So how can that be? I think using my Green New Deal hat, that is one of the things we identified when we started coming up with solutions. And so we try to make sure that our coalitions are talking about everything, right? So we want to make sure our labor folks understand what the environmentalists are the concerns are with our environmentalists. And we want everybody to understand what our social justice issues are. We strongly feel you cannot find the right solution if you don't look at it from all of those 3 major angles: the environment, the economy, and social justice.
Great. Eleanor?
Great.
Did
well,
I do it?
No, that was perfect. Well done. Well, thank you so much, Carrie and Sylvia. Thanks to all of the many EcoAction Arlington staff and board who supported this event. It's a wonderful team that I'm proud to work with. So we were amazed to have Matt De Ferrante and Karen. We'll be following up, sending out Karen's presentation and the information about the June 3rd summit. And we thank everyone very much for participating in our event. Have a wonderful weekend. Let's do an applause for Karen and Matt.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.